Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. In this episode of Friday Morning Ramblings, I'm going to show you the garden, talk about winter sowing. I'm kind of getting ready for next season. This will probably be the last Friday Morning Ramblings for 2021, and I'll pick it back up again in January. So we'll just start right here. This is something I built. This is my cold frame. It was right down there on the other side, and it would get really most of the southern sun coming in there, but I decided to move it. I put it right in here. Nice and solid, well built, almost. I built it myself. One mistake is that is polycarbonate, and the tubes run this way. And if you have a good eye, you can see that some moisture got on here. It would have been better to kind of cut this and put the tubes upward so the water would drain out of there, but moisture gets trapped in there a little bit, but that's okay. The reason I want to talk about this is because this year I'm going to start all my cool weather crops pretty much in here. The top comes off, the cool weather crops can take a freeze. This pretty much stayed like this for most of the summer, nice and solid. And I'll basically put the flats in here probably in the beginning of February, and I'll just let the cool weather crops do their thing. It'll stay warmer in here because it's low to the ground, that the top is low to the ground. The warmth really stays in here. Now, the reason I'm doing that is because this is going to be more effective, I think, than starting my cool weather crops indoors, keeping them in there for 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks. They kind of get tall and leggy because it's so warm in there. I'm going to give them what they want. Cold weather. I'll start the flats indoors. Soon as they germinate and break the surface, they're going to go right out here, and they'll grow much more slowly, but I think they'll be stockier and stronger. And the reason that I want to let them germinate indoors is because the biggest issue you have with winter sowing is sometimes it takes a long time for the seeds to germinate because it's so cold. So I'll use the warmth of the house to get the seeds to kind of just start to germinate, and then they're all going to come out here. And all the cool weather crops, kale, collards, lettuces, spinach, broccoli, cauliflower, all that will be grown in these flats. I like the design that I built. I will link the video, or I'll put the video link in the description of how I built this. I've tried this out before, and you can see, for obvious reasons, the top keeps blowing off, and I'm sick of it. I mean, I've moved this down, I've used bricks. When the wind comes, it lifts it up. It's really, really not effective. I wish it was, but it's not, and that's just going to probably get thrown out or something like that. I built this too. This is what I had my December, January broccoli and Brussels sprouts under. I'm not doing that this year. If we look over here slowly, the garden's doing really well without any protection. I just don't feel like doing that this season. It worked, but I had to keep an eye on it. And right now, my kales have white flies. So if I cover up the Brussels over there, I'm going to be dealing with white flies. And I feel like I don't need to do it. This is another nice design that I built. Corrugated polycarbonate. It's 2 pieces. And I just seal the end off with some foam board like this. The other side's open. But I will also put my cool weather plants in here, my crops, seed starts, whatever, for winter sowing also, where they can sit in here, stay cool, but warm enough to grow nice and slowly. And that's going to free up a lot of space for me in my grow room inside the house. Another interesting thing I talked about before in another video, it might have been my live video, was stratification. Because it's cold outside, because the flats are going to be out here, something like lavender, rosemary that needs some cold time, I can put those out here really in January. They'll actually freeze a little bit. They'll stratify. That means they're going to be ready to germinate. And as soon as it starts warming up under there, I think that lavender and rosemary will germinate nicely. It'll do really well out here, protected like that. And these are just some options for winter sowing. A lot of people use milk jugs and such. You can do that, but I'm going to use the flats, containers and stuff like that, so that I can kind of water them, put them out here, let them be. They'll do their own thing, and I'll have my seed starts come really probably end of March, middle of April. Garden's all been cleaned out. We're going to get to this side last this time. This is all my overgrown, different kinds of mints. One rosemary surviving in there. This will all get cut back. And I've just really been cleaning up everything. It's been warm. 65 degrees today. It was 70 degrees, I think, last Saturday or something like that. Another cold frame that I'll be doing something with, this one is stuck open. It's an automatic system, and I guess over time it just didn't work out, or it broke or got jammed or something like that. Anyway, I'll take that apart, but this is another form of cold frame that you could do winter sowing in too, especially in that one. And you can see I'm starting to get a handle on things. We'll talk about the containers in a second. These containers here, the tubs, are perfectly suited for growing garlic. So I put in some soft neck in here yesterday, and you know, a depth of something like that, they all just went in. And I'm just going to show you real quick with some finger holes of how closely I put them together. This was soft neck garlic, and I put a lot in there, something like that. And that's going to be one tub of garlic. Did another one over here, and then another one back there. And this is pretty much set up how I want it for next year. These tubs will be kind of scattered through the blueberries. I may trim back the hops some way that are growing up those poles, but this place is looking pretty good, finally under control. I've cleared this area out a little bit. Strawberries, strawberries, strawberries. They're all going to be, yeah, strawberries. Took some out of the ground that were growing out of those tubs, and we're all in the ground. You can transplant your strawberries right now. They are really able to take a freeze down into the low 20s pretty regularly. They can handle something if it gets into the teens. I have them in a flower box over there, and they freeze solid, and they come back year after year. They're really, really hardy. But you can move them around now. Strawberries are going to look beat up because we've been getting warmer weather. They're starting to put out their leaves and stuff like that. But this will be strawberries. I'm going to do peppers back there, something else in here, but I'm scaling back a little bit because I just don't need to have the same plants growing all over the place in my garden in different areas that I've been talking about. If you are interested in the exclusive rusted garden red color, there are, I think, a couple hundred left, and you can still pick them up at greenstalkgarden.com. Use the code TheRustedGarden, and you will save $10 if you spend $75 or more. I'll put all that stuff in the video description. These are the only beds I haven't gotten to right here, and I'll clear this all out, you know, maybe this weekend. My garlic is coming up back there. This is something I put in. Those are garlic I put in probably like 6 weeks ago. I don't even remember. It's fine if it comes up. That'll just get beat up and die back. But when the temperatures warm up in the spring, all that green growth will come back. You'll have nothing to worry about. Just finished this space today, actually. And these are where I'm growing the peppers. There's 13 containers here. I've talked about this before. I put 2 plants in each. That's 26 plants. This is plenty of peppers for my wife and I, for friends, and to really, really share. I just threw in some peat moss, some leftover cow manure that's not fully broken down. You know, I've been talking about that. I have at least 3-4 months, at least 4 months, probably 5 months before I put peppers in here. So that'll be plenty of time for the cow manure to break down that's not fully broken down. But I threw in a handful of potash, my wood ash, some of my bulb fertilizer that I made, some peat moss, and everything's refreshed. That's why I like these sunken containers, because I can just pop everything in here real quick. Don't worry about what's around here. I'll put down more wood chips, but the peppers will do really, really well right in here. These are set up. I'll mix it through come spring, 2 peppers per pot. That's the bag of peat moss I use. I really have my garden in shape that I don't need to use a lot of peat moss anymore. I have a lot of compost going. Maybe we'll go over there. But you know, it's nothing special right now. It pretty much looks the same as a month ago. But if you have the room, as I've been saying, try and get some leaves in a pile, try and get some compost going, because even if it's slow going, 2-3 years later, you're gonna have great stuff for the garden. Most of this bed and that bed will be filled up with compost that I made. So this is gonna be a really healthy area for whatever I decide to grow up there. This is where I had my corn. I ripped up the weeds. I'm just letting the weeds die on there. Wood ash, granular fertilizer, I'll let it do its thing really for a couple of months. Maybe I'll put some leaves on there. But you can see things are growing pretty well. And we're at the 17th of December right now, which is crazy. So I can still harvest out of here. And it's not really worth me trying to protect all these plants and grow into January. It's just not going to be great production. So I decided not to do it. Love the way the beds over here are looking. This space is all opened up. This is all new planting area really. So I think I've been saying I'll be using this really for a lot of my root crops and stuff like and stuff like that. The turnips will be put over here. A lot of the stuff that's growing here will be growing over there. And this is just plain old purple broccoli. It's delicious. It grows really well. You can see that I cut off the main head there and it sends out side shoots. This is what I'll be growing in the spring, and I think I'm going to just stick with this variety. And actually is just called purple broccoli. I was trying to figure out the name. I found the seed pack, and of course it was nice and simple, purple broccoli. Celery's beat up from the frost. I'm going to cut this back, see what comes back in the spring. This is the kale area. There are white flies on here, and these little specks right there above my thumb, that's a white fly. We'll see if we can find some more. If I give this a shake, you might see I started spraying the other day with peppermint oil. There's a couple right there. So they're starting to die off. But it's a bit of work. I don't mind eating a white fly or two. So I'm harvesting a lot off of here. I just wash the kale leaves with warm water, clean them up, make salads out of them. Mustard greens are a great cool weather crop. Absolutely delicious. White flies tend to leave them alone. Also have some spinach down there. So this is going to be an herb tower right here. This might be the peppers, I'm not sure. What I'm going to do next year is I'm just going to focus on this space over, and it's going to be, you know, the teaching area for container gardens. So this will be a full garden in here, all kinds of mixed vegetables. In my larger garden, again, going to try and keep the tomatoes over there, root crops over there, cucumbers maybe back on the trellises, and keep similar plants in the same area so that I just don't have to, you know, pop around and get to the tomato plants everywhere. But this will be an area that I'm concentrating on. I'm going to do a lot of videos just on container gardening. If you want to pick up root pouches from us, fabric pots from somewhere else, containers from anywhere, I would recommend trying to get 10 and 20 gallon containers. They're the best size. That's a 20 gallon container for growing tomatoes and peppers. That's about a 10 gallon size. The smaller ones are about 4 gallons. You can mix them up, but you want some nice growing area. Growing depth for your bigger plants. That's one of the mistakes a lot of people make. Like, you might take a little tomato transplant and put it right into that pot, and it'll probably grow for a while, but if you miss the watering just one time, it's going to mess up the whole system. So a determinate tomato will do really well in this pot. Maybe an indeterminate type. The determinate tomato gets to a set height, produces, dies off, doesn't need as much space. Indeterminate tomatoes keep growing 6 feet, 7 feet, 8 feet tall. So they're better grown, in my opinion, in a bigger container like this, 20 gallons. You just have more soil, more forgiving with watering, and it's just a better experience because you can get a little bit lazy and miss maybe watering, and you'll still have moisture in there. Here's an example of a tomato plant growing in a 20 gallon pot, and you can just see how well it did. Just a recommendation, if you're just getting started and you're going to be planting in 2022, is don't go by the size of the plant. Go by how big the plant is going to be come midsummer, and you really want to match that to a container size that will support a mature plant. It's real easy to, you know, pop in a tomato transplant into there, maybe put 2 into that one, look at this one and say, oh, the tomato transplants are small, let me put in 4 or 5. But when you get mature plants, they're going to suck the life and moisture out of your pots, and you just don't want that to happen. Cabbages are doing well. These are actually really close to being harvested, but the temperatures have been mild enough that they're still growing, they're still forming, so I'm not going to pull them out too early. I mean, they're getting to where I want them to be. So this is the side I normally come in, but I'm feeling really good. Everything is in place. I should be done in here come January 1st, especially with how crazy the warm weather has been. And I will be starting Friday Morning Ramblings, there's my dog, 2022 version inside the house with seed starts. And we'll come out and we'll do some of that winter sowing in the cold frames that I told you about. This is what I was showing off, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago. And if you notice too, the leaves are still in here. We've had crazy winds. I've had ladders blow over and other things blow down. But the leaves really stay down nicely on your containers and on the ground, especially if you kind of crumble them up a little bit with the mower, put them in, press them down, soak them in. You're not going to have any troubles. And this stuff is going to be golden come the spring. Letting this space kind of be and die off, I will get in there, dig out these weeds in here that are nice and green and large, and just clean this up. But there are a lot of potatoes in here, and this is going to be my potato and maybe a pumpkin garden next year. And I'm going to just let those potatoes stay in here, see what happens next year. I'll be curious about the harvest. I'll be adding in more compost and just kind of taking care of this space, tightening up the string that's on here. That does really keep the deer out. We'll walk over to the other garden down there. And then the compost I'm still building. I'm going to be taking the hay bales that are right over there, breaking them up, getting them onto here or into here. Some of this stuff is already starting to break down. It's going to be thrown on here after I clear it out. And basically what I do is I'll clear this out. This is really my finished compost. Everything in here is done. It really supported this crazy tomato growth. So I will dig this all up, throw that over here. That'll be the compost I'll be using to fill the beds. And stuff that's in the bins will then get thrown on top of here, just sit out in the elements. And that's kind of the routine that I have. Some more compost in there. And this is all for leaves. Leaves are by far the best product that I have, or the best resource that I have for making amendments to my garden. So I'm going to really capitalize on using the leaves year after year after year. This was completely full. So these are already starting to break down and do their thing. If I had the ability to get in there with a lawnmower, I would chop up all those leaves. I'll probably go around the property one more time and fill this up. So I'm going back to my list of things that grew well. Eggplant did really well here. I'm going to probably focus on eggplant in this area. I'm not going to repeat tomatoes and peppers and stuff like that. I'm going to kind of figure out what I want that's not in that garden, does better in this space, and we'll see what I come up with. I'm in the process of dumping out the different containers. We'll see what I do in this space. If we come over here, right in here's my mushroom garden. This will all be, everything that you see on the outer edge is going to be thrown into these boxes. That will be all raked up. And I think next year I'll have even more wine caps. Sweet potatoes are in there that I can still dig out. This is ginger in here. I harvested half of it. The winds shifted that a little bit. But I'm putting the plastic over the top. I have ginger in here too. Ginger can actually, you know, take really cold temperatures while in the ground. I think with the plastic on top there and there, the ginger rhizomes that I have, I think they're going to survive the winter. And I just want to see, one, if they survive the winter, and then how much bigger they grow, you know, next year basically. Instead of me putting in transplant rhizomes, I'm thinking maybe second year growth from rhizomes that are already in the earth. I'll get even a bigger harvest. We'll see. You know, I like to experiment. This was another compost area. I don't really need it. I don't know why I built it, but it kind of looks cool. I'll probably clear this out, move this structure to another place, put compost in there. But I will really, you know, open this space up, Even though I'm going to do the eggplant over here, maybe I do some sort of melons and cantaloupe and pumpkins in here, and this whole space is going to just be filled with different kinds of melons. At least that's where I'm going, or pumpkins. General idea. You know, I think this will be a shorter ramblings, only because I've gone over a lot of this before. This is kind of my vision of where I want to be right now. Let me just tuck in here. And that's what I would encourage you to do, is try and get as close as you can, you know, for December. You know, in places like California where you're continuing to garden, obviously you're not doing what I'm doing, but in places where you get winters, try and get your garden in the best shape you can before the freeze comes and it's way too cold to work out here. Because you'll really enjoy being able to come out in spring. A lot of it's pretty much organized. You just clean up a space, you can plant. And I don't know about you guys, but when it starts kind of getting colder, the days are shorter, you know, I'm looking for something to do. I don't like sitting in the house. You know, it gets a little bit, not really depressing, but just like lethargic. I'm like, all right, I need to do something. So I am grateful for these cool, these warmer days, 60 degrees, to get out here and just fix things up. I mean, I really like it. And you know, when the days are kind of cold and kind of gloomy, I will just come out and hang out like I am with this camera and look at different things, think about pictures I could take, try and get some ideas of what maybe I want to grow next year. And I don't really do sometimes much more than this. I just kind of walk around to different parts of the garden, look around, think about the design, the trellises, you know, this wire will stay in place. This is for the asparagus that's growing in there. And just kind of build the 2022 garden in my head. So please subscribe. A couple of things. I'll be doing, you know, full series again next year on seed starting, but I'm going to be concentrating on just one level of my growing station, you know, with the idea being, what do you need to seed start for a family of 4? I'm doing Friday morning rambling live videos twice a month. I will send out information on those about a week ahead of time, and they're typically going to be on Sundays at 1 o'clock. I am trying to find a time that works for people in Australia. A couple people have commented they'd like a better time for Australia. I'm going to see if I can do that. I also have the podcast going on with Callie Kim. We're doing about 3 episodes a month. All that information's in the video description. But I'm really looking forward to 2022. Please leave a comment about things that you're trying that are new or different for 2022. I really encourage you, keep your gardens going. If you had a tough year this year, next year's going to be better. Don't worry about it. But there's just so much beauty in a garden. I hope you do take the time and just kind of wander around like I do and look at what's growing and think about what the garden did this year and really enjoy making plans for next year. Thanks so much for watching, and please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com.